She wouldn't bend her beliefs, but she didn't judge others for theirs. The Gersons came to Fort Wayne from Detroit after Joe graduated from Wayne State with a degree in foreign trade. It was the only way Audrey would marry Joe, for he wanted to be in the Merchant Marines. Fine, she said, but you'll have to float around without me. They immediately became involved in the Jewish community and affiliated with the synagogue. And it was there that Audrey began to make friends and started her career as doing Jewish, as the president of the sisterhood. Among the many, many things she championed was inaugurating a catering service, which proved to be an excellent fundraiser. She acted in plays, planted and gardened in the synagogue lawn, and schlepped 3 kids to Hebrew and Sunday school, while at the same time running the Gerson household. The Jewish Federation also played a significant part in their life. Audrey recounted that at their first UJA fundraiser, when they were called upon to announce their pledge, Joe stood up and said, $250. Audrey just about fell over. On their way home, she asked him, how could he pledge such an amount when she had to buy food and clothe the kids? She recalled, he said, you know why I did it? I did it because we have to give for all those that don't. And that started the philosophy of tzedakah, giving that stayed with Audrey throughout her entire life. Some of you will recall that Joe spent a considerable part of his growing up in foster homes and in an orphanage. Audrey recounted that early in their marriage, during one of their first meals they had at home, she watched him eat soup with a spoon, a teaspoon. That's the way he had seen it done. Gently, she said to him, as you grow in business, you're going to have many business dinners. So when you order soup, try and remember to use your spoon. She was his coach, she noted. Joe wasn't crude. He just needed to be polished. So I became his polisher. Audrey was an advocate for women's rights even before the phrase was coined. When she became sisterhood president, she said, before we go on, we're going to have to settle one thing right now. There was a non-Jewish woman married to a Jewish man, and she wanted to join the sisterhood. We're going to have to change the bylaws, she said. Any woman married to a Jewish man shall be considered equal to him and eligible for whatever anyone born Jewish had. So let's vote. They did, and the motion passed. Her sense of social justice transcended the Jewish community. When asked by members of the DAR to join that organization, she promptly replied without a hitch, no. If your organization won't allow Marian Anderson to sing at your Constitution Hall because of her race, I don't want to be associated with you. Audrey continued her acts of loving kindness up until the day she passed, giving of her time, treasure, and talent to many causes and organizations that the family and friends cared about. Among them were the Civic Theater, the Embassy Foundation, Arts United, the Community Harvest Food Bank, Parkview Foundation, Blessings in a Backpack, Fort Wayne Community Schools Clothing Bank, the Rescue Mission, Aaron's House for Grieving Children, St. Mary's Soup Kitchen, Turnstone, the Jewish Federation, the Temple, and so many, many more. And let's not forget that she was quite a student of politics, a real dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. So liberal, in fact, that she made Bernie Sanders look like a Trumper. She even subscribed to that magazine, The Nation, probably one of only 6 subscribers in all of Indiana. During one of our conversations regarding where on the political spectrum she fell, I quoted Winston Churchill, who said, "If you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're old, you have no brain." Audrey, without a beat, missing a beat, replied, "When I get old, just remind me of that quote." It may sound greedy to want more lives with a person who lived so long, but the fact that Audrey was 93 does not diminish. In fact, it only magnifies the enormity of the loss we are feeling today. The typical Jewish mother is often the butt of cynical jokes, but Audrey Gerson was anything but typical. She personified wisdom, passion, fortitude, and kindness, and above all, an unshakable faith in family, a faith that accompanied her until her final breath last Friday. She will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Ben. I now invite Audrey's grandson, Chad Gerson, to share some words of memory. It's touching to see so many people here to honor Audrey. Some of us knew Audrey all our lives, and some of us only for a short time. Some saw her often, others less frequently. Some called her Audrey or Odd. Her friends called her Odd. Some Mrs. Gerson, some Mom. To me and to many of us, she was Nana. No matter what we called her or how near or far we might have been, she touched all of us indelibly and for the better. Just in the past few days, people have said things to me that show how deeply she touched us. Things like, she was everybody's grandmother. She had a heart of gold. She was one of my favorite people. She took care of everyone. She always made me laugh. She was a badass. And I can't argue with that. She was a badass. She defied the odds to stay with us longer than anybody expected. But of course, it could never be long enough. And as sad as it is that she's no longer with us, there's so many things for which we should be grateful. She had a very full and impactful 93 years of life. It lived long enough to spend quality time with several great grandchildren, and found humor and wonder and joy in life until the very end. We should all be so lucky. Her mind was as sharp as ever, even while her body was failing her. She had such dignity and emotional strength. She quickly earned the respect of everybody who knew her, everybody who met her. She had high standards, but for a purpose. They lifted and empowered everybody who was subject to them. It's because of Nana that when composing my thoughts today, I used semicolons and triple checked my grammar. She had a powerful moral compass. Sometimes she expressed it vocally, usually in exasperated sentences beginning with the phrase, "Don't these people understand?" But just as often, she expressed it quietly, casually, in conversation, or when she explained things to me as a child. When you spoke to her, you were learning something even without realizing it. She was molding you into a better person, no matter who you were. And in a society that increasingly, it seems to me, rewards style rather than substance, extremism rather than moderation, and selfishness rather than community. She had the courage to face it down, to do the right thing, and to demand the same of others. It rubbed off on all of us, especially me. I don't recall, she rarely, or I really don't recall that she ever raised her voice with me. She didn't have to. She had such confidence in her convictions that I knew she just had to be right. To those she loved and who she knew loved her, she was fiercely loyal, and we were fiercely loyal to her. She would do anything she could to help you if you needed it, and she helped untold numbers of others who never even had the pleasure of meeting her. And as she got on in years, and she was the one who needed help, so many of you were there for her. It meant so much to her, and it means so much to me and to our family. And yet, even then, she was giving. She wanted us to be happy. She was involved in her community and wanted to improve it wherever and however she could. It was important to her to continue the legacy of generosity that she helped to establish, along with her late husband, Joe, Papa. Those who knew them in earlier years know how instrumental she was to his business success and how influential she was to his philanthropy. Much is expected from those to whom much is given, or it should be anyway. Once, when I visited her in the Kingston, she told me over a contraband Heineken that I brought her to go with the seafood boil she wanted, and don't let them skimp out on the mussels and shrimp. It was a nice Jewish meal. How much she felt a need, an obligation to give back. And after Joe passed, taking on responsibility she had never taken on before, she handled them with her characteristic dignity, wisdom, and judgment. It was easy to be proud of her. Every one of us has a story to tell about Audrey. And then every one of us has a memory of a quieter moment, an act of caring or selflessness, or even a time when she just listened. That may not make a good story, but made her who she was to us. I have so many. Nana taught me to walk on crutches at age 4, up and down and back and forth along the hallway of her home on Southwood Avenue. Those crutches and my cast are still in her storage room, by the way. I'm sure they'll come in handy someday, along with the rotary phone and the manual typewriter and the prom dress from 1969. When I was younger and I would visit, Nana would sing me to sleep, well beyond the time when we both knew I was too old for that. How I would love to hear her sing just one more time. Excuse me. Many philosophers have grappled with the question of what constitutes a life well lived. Most of them conclude that it's making a meaningful contribution, positively impacting the lives of those around you and leaving the world a little bit better than you found it. Well, she certainly did that for all of us. At times, she could tell you everything that was on her mind just by flashing you an impish grin, and you couldn't help but laugh. At other times, she could tell you everything that was on her mind just by focusing her gaze intently upon you. And you couldn't help but comply. Either way, it was always for you, not for her. And so often, the most meaningful sentence in a conversation with her was her trademark, self-effacing and understated, "What do I know?" Well, Nana, you knew everything.
Thank you, Chad. I now invite Audrey's granddaughter, Chelsea Riley, to share her memories.
I wanted to share with all of you a memory of one of the last times I visited my Nana a few months ago. You all know Nana was a flashy, fashionable dresser, as was my papa. She loved bold prints, shimmer, color-coordinated sets, dresses that my papa brought back from her from abroad, unique pieces from the Jack's clothing store, and the list goes on. And she loved to spoil her grandchildren. She bought us the wildest, most colorful, extravagant outfits for Hanukkah and our birthdays. I'll never forget her giving us headbands and bows that perfectly matched each outfit. Thank goodness it was the 80s because we fit in fine. Recently, she reminded me that once I became a teenager in the 90s, I asked her to only buy me Black clothing, which I didn't remember, but sounded like me and sounded like the style of the 90s. She said every time she went shopping, she told the sales lady that she was shopping for her granddaughter, Chelsea, and she brought out all the Black clothing options. Meanwhile, as she was relating this to me, I was wearing Black pants, Black boots, Black socks. You get the idea. She went on to tell me that one time she saw an adorable shirt they only had available in yellow. And she decided to risk it and get it for me anyways. And she said that later I raved about the yellow shirt to her, proving her knack for nudging people to add more color to their lives. Over a decade ago, the last thing she knit me was this scarf. She asked me what color I wanted, and I said I wanted a simple, small, plain purple scarf. And as you know, Nana didn't do simple or small or plain. She somehow found 18, you can count later, 18 different shades and texture of yarn to create a purple magical masterpiece I could have never imagined, much less requested. As I look around today at so many of us in Black, as custom tells us to, I'm thinking of my flashy Nana with her blue eyeshadow, a classic red pedicure always on her toes, and her home filled with eggplant colored furniture and a turquoise entry room. She lived a colorful life filled with family and friends that cherished their time with her. And she even, on occasion, had some colorful language, especially for those who went against her progressive ideals. As we remember her today, dressed all in Black, let us honor all the joy and color my Nana added to our lives and strive to add as much color to our own lives and to the lives of those we love. Yeah.
Thank you, Chelsea. That was beautiful. A woman who stood steadfastly by her husband as he began his professional life, and they together supported an amazing and beautiful Fort Wayne community. A woman who taught by example and by glance, who inspired her grandchildren to break the rules and bring her contraband. I love that. And an adoring Nana who brought color to the lives, not only of her grandchildren, but to everyone that she knew. What beautiful framings of Audrey Gerson's life. And I was asked also to speak of Audrey, although after hearing those, you have a beautiful vision of who Audrey was. And it is my privilege to share what I saw in the brief time that I knew her. It is really, truly a privilege to be leading the funeral of a woman who was so well known and so well loved. Audrey was a beloved member of our community, a cherished friend to many, and a significant influence to at least 3 generations. Audrey lived a life that was full of love, clearly, and service to others, clearly, and she was deeply committed to serving those in need. As I got to learn about Audrey, I learned that she had a particular commitment among all of the ways in which she worked to make the world better, but she had a particular commitment to reducing hunger in her community. In her heart was this desire to reduce hunger. But she also worked tirelessly to support the Fort Wayne Jewish and the general communities. She saw it as a privilege to be able to give back to those in need, and she did so with grace, with generosity, and a kind spirit that was exemplary and will never be forgotten by those who knew and loved her. I had a conversation yesterday with one of Audrey's beloved family members who shared that the rule was, if you had a dollar or $10 or a lot more than that, the obligation was the same. A third for yourself to use it, a third to save, and a third to give to tzedakah. And that is a very clear and simple example of the way that Audrey not only conducted her own life, but how she influenced such wonderful values in the community that she built around her, of beloved children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and many, many friends. Audrey's Jewish identity was at the core of her being, and she was committed to passing on this tradition to her children, even if it meant, as I understand, driving to the synagogue 7 days a week. In my conversations with her family and with members of her community, I learned that Audrey was particularly proud of her support of the Jewish Federation of Fort Wayne, earning both the Pomegranate and the Lion of Judah for her steadfast support of our Jewish initiatives at home, across the country, and around the world. She did this work in humility, but was very proud to do it. To Audrey, family was everything, as you've heard. She saw, I am told, one of her greatest accomplishments was how she raised her family. She committed herself to be a role model to her children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and great-grandchildren, all of them. And this wasn't simply an abstract concept for Audrey. She walked her talk. I learned from one of Audrey's nieces that Aunt Audrey's and Uncle Joe's home was a place where people of all ages were always welcome. She was the cool, trusted adult for all the young people in her family and in the neighborhood. I am told it was not at all unusual for her kids' friends to stop by just to hang out with her for a while, even if their friends, Audrey's kids, weren't home. And perhaps they might also have an opportunity to enjoy an orange push-up frozen dessert during their visit. She always had them. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to become acquainted with Audrey over the course of the last year. As we all know, COVID made getting to know each other or just being with each other so difficult. And it was such a wonderful day when I was finally able to visit Audrey at the Kingston. And when I arrived there, it was like I was coming into her home. She was an attentive host. She was curious, and she asked great questions, and she told wonderful stories about family, about community, and about the synagogue. She was very helpful to a newish rabbi who was trying to learn about the history of the community he serves. She was such a wealth of tradition and knowledge and memory. Audrey's long life and the love she gave has made a mark on the world she inhabited. Her children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews and great-grandchildren, members of the Fort Wayne community, the Fort Wayne Jewish community, just people who lived here, and the many, many lives she touched with her kindness. Audrey was the embodiment of our Jewish value of tikkun olam. She endeavored to make the world a better place through her actions. And you heard it. You heard how she did it, both in terms of supporting causes, but also supporting people and making the world a better place through her love. As you mourn today, you will also carry her legacy with you. We have a saying in Jewish life, and I cannot think of a more fitting moment in which we understand exactly what it means and exactly why we say it. May Audrey's memory be a blessing and a comfort to each of you in this moment and always. I now invite Audrey's daughter, Rhonda, to share some words of gratitude.
When my mom asked me to thank people individually, I told her I was afraid to do it because I was afraid that she would forget somebody who really deserved to be thanked. She said, Rhonda, I'm not taking a survey, start writing. And start writing I did. My mom wants to thank everybody at Visiting Angels, especially Eiler and Brianna. To everyone at Kingston Care Center, and I see so many of you here. My mom actually listed 18 people, and I will not read every name, but special thanks to Jordan, Rochelle, and Shauna. To James, her driver, who decided, I think I'll get a new van just so Audrey can ride in style. To Dr. Podzalinski, Dr. Steffi, Dr. Leigh Couflair, and others who became my mother's fabulous doctors when they weren't taking any new patients because Dr. Michael Miro and Denise Andorfer said they just shouldn't pass on having Audrey Gerson. To Susie Miller, who wrote an actual snail mail letter to my mom each and every week and never missed a week the whole time she was in Kingston. Pam and Joe Paris. Joe, you schlepped to every party, every award ceremony, and every celebration for my mom. Pam, for over 43 years, you made my mom feel and look like Elizabeth Taylor. You were a dear friend and so much more than just a simple hairdresser to her. I know how much you loved each other. It was such an honor to watch you a couple of days ago do my mom's hair and makeup and prepare her for whatever comes next after this day. She is resting comfortably with the 2 pillows that you had made for her. To Jackie, Bonnie, Jean, Jenny, Sarah, Marie, Stuart, Judy, Cindy, Leslie, Barbara, and other friends for your visits, celebrating her birthday, care packages, holiday treats, and especially that Barney Greengrass gefilte fish that you had flown in from New York. Wanda, I remember the day probably about 20 years ago that you told my parents you were no longer going to be cleaning houses. Very calmly, my dad said, well, that's for other people. Of course, you're still going to be with us. and she never left them. Wanda, you were so much more than just a housekeeper to them. I remember the day you were worried that my mom's new helper was not strong enough to handle her, and you climbed right into the shower to help. Your clothes and shoes were drenched. Dan Gansert of blessed memory, you took unbelievable care of my parents and both of their homes. From the minute your children were born, they knew if Miss Audrey calls, I don't care if she needs a light bulb changed, the whole family is going running. And they did. Tommy and Pat Levine. Pat, you are such a good sport for putting up with all the shenanigans of my mom, her sister Barbara, and all these other women who thought that your husband was really hot stuff. At 93, sitting here in the front row, he still is. Thank you for coming for holidays and celebrating birthdays together, as Tommy's birthday is the day after my mom's. Tommy, you have lost your best friend since you both were 4 years old, nearly 90 years ago. My mom said thank you for all your reminiscing and love. Ben and Sharon Eisbart. My mom said she thanks you for all the years of being my dad's best friend, Ben, mostly for your visits to her, your support, and especially during coronavirus, when we conducted business with masks and social distancing. You have both been so much help, especially these last few days, sitting with my mom and with me into the wee hours of the morning, even after she had died. Rabbi, you also sat with my mom and me for most of the night in the room with my mom after she died. Thanks so much for your visits to Kingston, where you stayed for hours listening to her stories from childhood to the present. My mom always said, I have no idea why you chose Fort Wayne, but we all know we are blessed, literally beyond measure, that you did. And we are blessed that you have Samara working with you. Her help this week has been simply perfect. Jeff, Christina, Brant, Stephanie, and your staffs. My mom says to tell you, she was grateful that after my dad died, you always came to her home and then the Kingston for all the business meetings. You never made her come to you. You know that she felt more comfortable in her own environment. She said, thanks for being her team. Sarah and John. On January 5th, 2019, I got a call that my mom was in an emergency situation. Jumping in the car, I called you and said, is it possible you could get my mail for a few days? 4 years later, I'm still here. And because of you, it was possible for me to never leave my mom because you took care of everything. She loved all the cards you always sent in the snail mail for every occasion and just for no occasion at all. There are never enough thanks for you two. Friends who are family. Marcia, Gary, Molly, Ryan, Nathan, Ashley. My mom said there is a reason people stay best friends for 63 years. My mom said she thanks you for always answering her call whenever she called. Whether you were cleaning up her flooded basement, shoveling her snow, whatever she needed. Marcia, you were truly her daughter. To the Merritt and Finkel family, Brad, whenever my mom needed you, you were there. Okay, I needed you too. Her car battery was dead, there you were. Her tires were flat, there you were. She needs to know where to go to buy a stove and a refrigerator. And there you were, Brad. Most of all, she counted on you to find her a handyman. And there you were. Thank you, Alana, for the treats, no nuts, no seeds, that you made, possibly with your mom, I'm not sure, for coming to celebrate my mom and for being so fabulous with her great-grandchildren. Bruce, is there anything you can't do? You fixed her bed so it stopped slamming against the wall when the aides moved her, strung her trees exactly how she wanted them to grow inside, and so much more. Most of all, when she could not do the stairs anymore, you installed a huge metal ramp so that she could move freely in and out of her house. She was very grateful. Cheryl. My mom said we wouldn't have made it without you, especially during the pandemic. You fed us, comforted us, visited us, brought your mom to us, cleaned up floods with us, cleaned the garage for us, and so much more. We have leaned on you, Cheryl, to such a degree, and you never fell. Janet. My mom waited for your matzo balls, your creamsicle jello, and all your yummy foods, and you never failed her. During the 17 and a half months that we had to sit outside her window in every kind of weather due to coronavirus, you were there. On her birthday in July, literally, you nearly got heat stroke in the 99-degree heat, but you were there. She loved your visits and your stories. Janet, you are a true friend. Family. Chelsea and Alfredo. Nana loved all your many visits, especially when Chelsea came into the room and surprised her wearing one of Nana's own outfits. Glad we had somebody in the family that could fit into them. Especially when you wore the things that Nana had knit. Both of you were such a bright light in her life. Kaylin and Chris, thanks for bringing little Jack to meet Nana. She thought he was absolutely precious. Gail, Eric, Gina, Natalie, Jasmine, Marissa, Danielle, Taylor, and Braden. Nana was so grateful you traveled to celebrate on her birthday, and often just for no occasion, especially the ones who stood outside the window in all kinds of weather. She said she loved you all, and she said she learned from Papa, not by blood, but by love. Nieces and nephews. Anne, Michael, Matthew, Nicholas, Benjamin, Katie. You were always there, and Aunt Audrey adored you. Michael, just one question. Did you ever sit down at the house, or were you always busy installing toilets, fixing things, and doing whatever Aunt Audrey had waiting for you? She loved your visits in all kinds of weather, whether you were all inside or at her window. Because of your family, even after the ramp was no longer sufficient, you built a lift in her garage so she could go in and out in her wheelchair. One of her greatest joys was having you all wheel her outside so she could watch her Eagle Scouts cook the Thanksgiving turkey in a trash can. Barry, Trevor, Ashley, Mackenzie, Abby, Parker, and Audrey loved each one of you so much, and you made her feel very special by coming to visit whenever you could, including every Thanksgiving and birthday. Barry, you especially bonded with her over Oli's Pizza, online chefs, and delicious cookies. Thank you for sitting outside in all kinds of weather, especially Barry, when we could only communicate with her by whiteboards. Roberta and Jim. I think it was Jim's milk chocolate brownies that made Auntie Audrey introduce you at Kingston. Oh, this is my nephew, Jim. Oh, yes, and he's married to my niece, Roberta. You got second billing because he brought the goodies. She loved your frequent visits every couple of weeks, especially because she knew she got to send you all over town looking for her favorite goodies. When you heard she died, you came immediately to Fort Wayne at 4 o'clock in the morning. You sat with my mom and with me until after 6 a.m. I feel certain that my mom knows that you have handled all the plans for the Shiva, all the details for these next few days, and she is very grateful. Marla. For the way you took care of both of my parents for so many years. I told my mom I just wouldn't even know where to begin. So she wrote it in her own handwriting. It was 2 full pages, and obviously I can't read it all. But I picked out a couple sentences. My dear Marley Gale, you have been so much more than just a niece to me. You are a friend. You are a comfort to my heart in the best of times and in the worst of times. There are few people I feel more emotionally safe with in my life than you. All of my love, Auntie Audrey. P.S. By the way, Marla, I'm not perfect. Chad, Rona, Raj, Quinn, Athena. The absolute brightest lights in Nana's life. After Papa died, Nana was absolutely amazed that you called her every single solitary day, Chad. Not even the 13-hour time difference from Hong Kong deterred you. You came to see her during the pandemic, even though you then had to quarantine in Canada for 14 days away from your family upon your return. When you couldn't travel during the pandemic, you would Zoom or FaceTime with Rona and the children. Never missed a Thanksgiving or a birthday, other than when the pandemic refused to allow you over the border. Nana said she loved the way you let her call you Chatty Matthew, give you kisses and hugs over the phone, and no matter where you were, even in public, you gave the kisses and hugs back on the phone. She loved to call out, Rona-Leen, and you always went running. She called Athena, my little doobie-doo, and she adored her boys. She loved how you all played bingo with her, and she loved the prizes we brought. How fitting that you were the last to talk to her in her ear. as she slipped away. The most important person to thank today is you, Mom. With grace and dignity, you showed us how it's done. You never were allowed to step out of your room at Kingston for 17 and a half months. Not one toe out of that room when coronavirus was raging. I honestly don't know how you did it. Those of us who were outside your window expected you to just open the window and jump out to be with us, but we knew it was not to be. You were the best mom, Nana, auntie, friend, and more. I will miss you desperately each and every day. Rest in peace, Mom. You absolutely deserve it. I love you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rhonda. Now we'll take a moment for reflection, supported by a beautiful song of tribute offered by Nicholas, Audrey's nephew, and Nathan, a dear friend.
Pray you'll be alright. Watch us where we go. And help us to be wise. Times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer. When we lose our way, lead us to the truth. Guide us with your grace to a place where we'll be safe. I pray we'll find your love. Hold you in our heart. When the stars go out each night, remind us where you are. Oh, let this be our when shadows fill our day. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we see. Let this be our when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace to a place where you safe.
Thank you. When we are faced with grief, Jewish tradition guides our focus not to the pain of our loss, but to the compassion of God. I will now offer the prayer El Maleh Rachamim, which is translated in English as follows. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one who has entered eternity, grant her clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold her in the embrace of your wings. Secure her soul in eternity. Adonai, she is yours. May she rest in peace. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochan Barumim, Hamseh Menucha Nechona al Kanfei HaSchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshet Horim, Kazohar HaKari HaMizrahim, Et Nishmat Esther Devora Bat Kalman V'Mimi Shahalcha Le'olomo Ba'avur Shedodvu Tzaracha Ba'ad Haskarat Nishmata Began Eden Tehe Menucha L'chain Ba'al Harachamim Yastira Ba'asate Kanfav Le'olamim Yitzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmata Adonai Unachalata V'tanuach B'shalom Al Mishchava V'nomar Amen. The psalmist has written, weeping may tarry into the night, but joy comes in the morning. O God, full of compassion, please send your comfort to those who grieve. Help them to dispel the sadness that accompanies the pain of loss and to find joy in the precious memories of Audrey Gerson. May your love inspire them to focus on the love they had for Audrey and that she had for them. Help them to face the future with courage, to treasure Audrey's wonderful legacy. Sustain us in our faith, O God, even in this troubling time, as you have sustained our people in times of trouble and sorrow throughout the generations. Blessed are you, Adonai, who provides comfort to the brokenhearted. And together we say, Amen. May the Holy One of blessing, for whom all things come and to whom all things return, give us light and peace on this day of grief and mourning. And may our service of memory for Audrey bring comfort and strength. This week, we will continue the celebration of the life of Audrey Gerson immediately following the graveside service, and tomorrow evening at 5:30 p.m., the family will host a visitation meal with a Shiva memorial service at Congregation Achduth V'Shalom, 5200 Old Mill Road. And on Friday evening, beginning at 7:30 p.m. at the temple, Audrey's name will be read for Kaddish during Shabbat services, and her family will host an oneg reception following the service. We are now making our transition to the service of burial. And in her advanced planning, she planned. Audrey chose the following pallbearers. And as I call your name, please come to the front of the room and you will receive direction from the staff here. Barry Cohen, Michael Sheehan, Chad Gerson, Ben Eisbart, Alfredo Vargas Bello, Jim Flaherty, Gary Cook, Tommy Levine, and not present here, but here in spirit, Bill Crady and Stuart Block. I also call to come forward the honorary pallbearers that Audrey has selected: Quinn Gerson, Raj Palabay, Braden Wade, Matthew, Nicholas, and Benjamin Sheehan, Nathan Cook, Trevor Cohen, and not present but here in spirit, Parker Cohen, Asher Prady, Captain James McNamara, Arnold Golden, and Ryan Maddox. We will continue our service at Fort Wayne Jewish Cemetery. The service here is now concluded. Go in peace. Please rise.